All roads converge. On Julian Assange. The slow crucifixion of Assange is situated at the crossroads of current international crises: COVID-19, Ukraine, the climate crisis. Why is his work and fate so central to our shared future? This essay is the 10th and final part of a series about the persecution of Julian Assange, and WikiLeaks, and, to a lesser extent, all those associated with them. It may also be the most controversial. I hasten to add that it contains a very personal point of view which is not in any way intended to represent the position of the official Assange campaign or the #Free Assange community, except where quoted directly. It is quite long, so the video version is presented in a series of episodes. This series began with an essay, and it ends, for now, with another. In between have been 7 living compendia, plus 1 Correct the Record podcast review, all source materials that illustrate various aspects of the persecution of a journalist, publisher, high-tech maestro, family man, and courageous human being. All previous episodes are listed at the foot of this essay. There may be further episodes in the future, as events unfold. I will be delighted to create another when or if Julian is finally freed from his incarceration. But for now, here endeth the lesson in the cruelties of the powerful, to those who would speak the truth. This series began, in part 1, with a tweet from Ciaron Reilly that drew my attention to a potential link between Julian Assange and Julian of Norwich. This led to my examining parallels between the two Julians who, 7 centuries apart, each survived a pandemic that claimed millions, lived much of their lives in seclusion, but whose words traveled out from the small spaces in which they were confined, to make a large difference in the lives of people across the world. Both were committed to searching for, and sharing, important truths, while each sacrificed their own comfort and liberty to that end. And each had a cat as a companion, as does this author. Reilly was also quoted, from a tweet that now seems to have disappeared, in a John Giggins article entitled The Slow-Motion Crucifixion of Julian Assange. In both tweets, Reilly alluded to the vigil that the apostles kept, or didn't keep, in the Garden of Gethsemane, the night before the arrest of Jesus Christ. He wrote, "To vigil is to stay awake while British society slumbers to the ongoing, slow-motion, crucifixion of Julian Assange. A society where fellow journalists, academics, and church leaders keep a housebroken silence on the ongoing persecution of a publisher who has published the truth." Emmy Butlin was part of the committee to defend Julian Assange, which kept vigil outside the Ecuadorian embassy over the whole period Julian Assange was there. She described how they continued their solidarity vigils after his arrest. She said, "We followed him. We were faithful to what we said we were going to do, and follow him to where he is. We continue our solidarity vigils outside HMP Belmarsh, where he is, and elsewhere in London." In his first speech from the embassy balcony, on August 2012, after being granted asylum, Assange himself referred to the vigil kept outside the Ecuadorian embassy by supporters, at a time when it looked like the UK police would storm the building. He credits their vigilance with halting that legal and diplomatic catastrophe. He went on,
"After dark, I could hear teams of police swarming up into the building through its internal fire escape. But I knew there would be witnesses, and that is because of you. If the UK did not throw away the Vienna Conventions the other night, it is because the world was watching. And the world was watching because you were watching. So the next time somebody tells you that it is pointless to defend those rights that we hold dear, remind them of your vigil in the dark before the Embassy of Ecuador. Remind them how, in the morning, the sun came up on a different world and a courageous Latin American nation took a stand for justice.
Reilly has spoken often about Assange in Easter terms. On the Unity 4J Vigil 2.0, July 2018, he put it very simply.
To me as a Christian, it's a slow-motion crucifixion.
It is a way of seeing Julian's persecution that is shared by many others. For Easter 2019, just after Julian's arrest, the Norwegian street artist AFK mounted this image, complete with mourners at the foot of the invisible cross. A cross implied by the crosshairs of the telescopic sight. The website states, Assange is dressed in a costume similar to that of the prisoners in the US-run torture prison, Abu Ghraib, in Iraq. A press card with the inscription Free Press hangs around his neck and covers his chest. Julian Assange and the Free Press card are placed right in the firing line, framed by a crosshair of a telescopic sight. In the crosshairs, we read the text. If you tolerate this, who will be next? Under Assange sits two figures with bowed heads. One of them is the American Statue of Liberty, while the other is Justicia or Lady Justice. Both are clearly burdened by shame. Between them is the inscription 1984 is so yesterday. In 2020, Kenneth MacAskill MP, for 7 years Justice Secretary of Scotland, called the prosecution of Julian Assange a political crucifixion which is about seeking to bury truth, and those exposing it. During Easter 2022, this cartoon, by Mexican political cartoonist Antonio Rodriguez, was tweeted. With the label Via Crucis, Way of the Cross. That same Easter, Somerset Bin thought that a Lunid cartoon, on the same theme, was suitable for illustrating the powerful example that the persecution of Assange is providing, to both current investigative journalists and the younger generation. An example that is perhaps the primary purpose of the exercise. Father Dave, speaking at the November 2021 Sydney premiere of the film Ithaka, also thought that the crucifixion analogy was appropriate.
There are some people you just can't kill, because there are some messages that just cannot be silenced. The truth ultimately cannot be crucified. The truth ultimately will come out. Julian is the public face of our resistance. We will not be silenced. We will not allow them to crucify the messenger. God bless Julian, God bless us all.
At the Belmarsh Tribunal, on the 25th of February 2022, Chris Hedges, an ordained Presbyterian minister, as well as a prize-winning journalist, said, "Beyond his great public service with WikiLeaks, it is his unwillingness to surrender his integrity and dignity that is key to understanding why the powers that be continue to crucify him." Australian journalist Andrew Fowler has also spoken on that theme. Max Blumenthal spoke of Julian's Calvary, saying, "If Julian Assange can be tortured and killed in prison, so can we." He understood how power, truly, operates in an empire. He's a journalistic guide. It's very painful to witness the Calvary he's been put through. And then, of course, there is the Captain Borderline image, from the opening pastiche, that comes alive on their website in video form, with the soundtrack from Collateral Murder playing as the image is animated.
Come on, fire! Keep shooting. God damn it, Kyle. Alright, I hit him by head. Oh, it's their fault for bringing their kids to a battle. That's right. We go frequency. I just drove over a body. Yeah. Sniper 5-2. Oh yeah, look at those dead bastards. Nice.
The crucifixion theme is powerful in both Anglo and Northern European, predominantly Protestant countries, and in Southern European, Latin American, and some Asian, predominantly Catholic countries. In Russia too. And other predominantly Orthodox Christian countries, and the former European colonies in Africa. It speaks straight to the heart of the issue. One brave and far-sighted man is being tortured by the powerful, and displayed in all his agony, in order to create fear and timidity in all of us. But, and it is a big but, The other side of the crucifixion theme is the awakening that follows in those who bear witness to it. A bright light is shone on the possibility of a whole new way of living, or, as Nils Melzer puts it, a candle is lit in a dark room. If we can wake up to the truths Julian Assange has shared, and that his treatment by the authorities, in multiple jurisdictions, has revealed, and act on our highest instincts, we can save ourselves, and our children, and our world, from the psychologically and environmentally polluted, and increasingly authoritarian hell that is being enacted all around us. On the eve of the first episode in the 2020 extradition hearing, a large crowd gathered to protest the whole process. Kristinn Hrafnsson told them,
"Spying on Assange, and the staff of the company knew exactly who they were working for, where the material would go to. It would go to the CIA. In internal emails, they said, we are now working for the dark force." And that is exactly what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with the dark force. We're dealing with the dark force that is growing in its power and its overreach. It's a dark force that decides that they can assassinate people, high-level officials in foreign countries, with drone attacks. It's a dark force who kills children in war zones. It's a dark force that with impunity assassinate Reuters journalists, as we exposed in the collateral murder video. It's a dark force that now wants Julian extradited to the United States and thrown in a cell to spend the rest of his days there. We must stop it. We must stop this force. This is not about left or right in politics. We can unite on this. It's a dark force versus us who want justice, transparency, accountability, and truth. We have the momentum with us. Please tell everybody that you know that they have to side with Assange and fight against his extradition. If they tell you, I would rather fight for the environment or against animal cruelty or gender equality, tell them they are about to take every right away from you. You will not be able to fight for any other cause. We are talking about the fundamentals here. We must fight against the extradition. We must save Julian Assange.
In essence, if we can save Julian, perhaps we can also save ourselves and our planet. The people who invoke this parallel between Julian Assange and Jesus Christ intend no blasphemy. Most take very seriously Christian and other teachings that all human beings contain a divine spark, which they can choose to amplify, or not. For example, from Romans 8 verse 14. For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are children of God. From Matthew 5 verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Father Dave, in an earlier iteration of the speech discussed earlier, had this to say in Sydney, in February 2020.
From me today, I know a lot of people find this image by my friend Luke Cornish of Julian being crucified offensive. They say it makes him out to be a Christ figure. They miss the point. The Roman Empire crucified lots of people, apart from Jesus. They crucified thousands of people. Indeed, they crucified anyone who dared to question their ultimate authority. And long before the cross was ever a symbol of faith, it was a symbol of imperial power. After the failed revolt of the slaves under Spartacus in 73 BC, the Roman Empire crucified 6,000 slaves and put their tortured bodies on display over a 200-kilometre stretch of the Via Appia. This was their way of saying that we are all powerful and you are nothing. That we have the power of life and death, the power to imprison, the power to kill, and who are you to question us?
Let's interrupt Father Dave to remind ourselves that in Game of Thrones, the crucifixion of 163 slave children by the masters of Meereen was returned in kind by Daenerys, when she later crucified the same number of masters after her conquest of the city. That avenue of the crucified was inspired by the Via Appia.
Empires change as the centuries go by, but the lust for power, the arrogance and the assumption of impunity remains the same. Who are you to question us? How dare you call us to account? What is your truth compared to our power? Today's empire is trying to turn our brother Julian Assange himself into a symbol of their power. Like the crosses that lined the Via Appia, they hold him up for the world to see as a warning to anyone who would question their authority. Dare to call the empire to account, and this will happen to you too. And yet, around 2,000 years ago, the cross was adopted as a symbol of faith by one small group of people who came to believe that imperial violence did not have the final word. Some people, they believed, could not be crucified. Some voices just couldn't be silenced. When the light of truth is genuinely shining, the darkness can never ultimately put it out. Forgive me if I'm starting to sound a bit religious. It's an occupational hazard. But this really is a battle of light against darkness. Julian is being crucified because he spoke the truth, because he exposed crimes, terrible crimes of murder and violence, and it's the persons responsible for those crimes who should be being dragged before the courts to give account of themselves. Don't crucify the messenger. That's my plea. Don't bother, because you can't ultimately silence the message of truth, and don't do it, because we, the Australian people, demand that you bring this fellow son of our sunburnt country, our fellow Australian Julian Assange, our brother, that you bring him home.
At the Belmarsh Tribunal, in February 2022, Chris Hedges went on in a somewhat milder form, although I am sure he would have agreed with Father Dave's more dramatic tirade.
But today, I want us to reflect on Julian himself. For Julian, endowed with precocious skills, could easily have been someone else. He could have sold his talents to Silicon Valley, to Wall Street, or to intelligence and surveillance agencies who would have paid handsomely. He could have built a lucrative career, one where he was financially secure, perhaps wealthy. He could have obtained the possessions we are told in our consumer society we should aspire to: an opulent house, luxury cars, financial security, fine clothes, and the status that comes with material acquisition and advancement within the structures of power. No worries, no controversy, no persecution. But to follow this route, a route many have followed, would have required Julian to surrender his integrity and his dignity. It would have required him to forsake justice and freedom, to suppress and control the aspirations of the vast majority locked outside the golden gates of privilege and power. It would have placed him within the interlocking systems designed by the ruling elites to concentrate privilege, wealth, and power among themselves. It would have required Julian to become a cog in the mega machine, to play a part in constructing our corporate totalitarianism. Julian chose not to do this. He turned away from the siren call of success, at least as it is defined by the powerful. He set out on the difficult road taken by all who fight the oppressor on behalf of the oppressed. A life of meaning is a life of confrontation. When you resist radical evil, you jeopardize your career, your reputation, your financial solvency, and at times, your life. It is to be a lifelong heretic. When you stand with the oppressed, the crucified of the earth, then you are treated like the oppressed. You too are crucified. And that is what is happening to Julian.